I'm sorry, you're not on the list. The soldier's voice cut through me like a blade, in front of my entire family. My mom's face turned red, but not with shame, with satisfaction. My brother, decked in his polished ceremonial uniform, smirked. Maybe next time, sis, he whispered, loud enough for others to hear. Before you scroll, this story will flip everything you expect. Hit subscribe, like, and share, because what happens next? You won't believe who I really am. I stood still, clutching the small velvet box in my hand, the one that held the medal I had earned. My father turned his back like I was invisible. The officer at the gate shrugged and waved, and the rest of my family, even my cousin Brian who'd failed basic training twice. I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. They made sure the seating chart, the invite list, even the slideshow had zero trace of me. The worst part? I saw it coming. And I still showed up. Maybe they forgot, my Aunt Linda whispered, but I caught the smirk hiding behind her fake concern. I was the black sheep, the one who joined the military instead of going to law school like my brother. They'd always called me reckless, unladylike, an embarrassment. But what they didn't know was, while they were busy throwing parties and praising my brother, I had been moving through ranks faster than any officer in my division's history. Quietly, strategically. I looked at the crowd gathered under the flags and banners. The entire ceremony was about to start. My name wouldn't be mentioned. My seat didn't exist. My story, buried. But just as they began the opening honors, something shifted. The mic crackled. A voice came through. We have one more guest of honor arriving. The crowd turned. I stayed frozen. Then the commander stepped forward, stiff and proud, and said into the mic, "Welcome, Major Emily Carter. We've been waiting for you." And the way my mother's jaw dropped, that's when I knew. They had no idea who I'd become. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. My brother's confident smile twitched, then collapsed. The commander stepped off the stage and walked straight toward me. "Apologies for the confusion, Major. Your presence was requested at the highest level," he said firmly, saluting me in front of everyone who had spent years pretending I didn't matter. I returned the salute, steady, sharp, precise. The same salute I'd practiced through sandstorms, midnight drills, and 18-hour missions they'd never even asked about. The silence was deafening. Every chair turned toward me. The cousin who once called me army trash was now fumbling with his phone. My mom's hand clutched her pearl necklace like it might choke her. "I thought, you were just," she stammered, voice barely above a whisper. "Just a what, Mom?" I said, stepping forward. "Just a dropout? Just a disappointment? Just the daughter you never introduced at dinner parties?" Her eyes flickered, but she didn't answer. She didn't have to. The shame on her face said it all. The commander gestured for me to follow him. "We've made an amendment to today's ceremony," he announced to the guests. "Before honoring Lieutenant Carter, we will first recognize Major Emily Carter, the recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross for her classified humanitarian mission in Eastern Europe." The air vanished from the courtyard. Classified. That one word hit them harder than any insult I could have thrown. They didn't even know I'd been deployed. That I'd led an undercover rescue that saved 34 lives. That I had more medals than anyone on that stage. Because I never told them. I never needed to. All I ever wanted was for them to respect me. But now? Now they were scrambling to understand what they missed. My brother stepped forward, trying to save face. "Wait, how come I never heard about this?" "Because you never asked," I said, my voice calm, but every word slicing like steel. "You were too busy being the favorite." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in years, he had no comeback. They thought I'd show up to beg for a seat. They didn't realize I was the headline. As I walked alongside the commander toward the front row, my heels echoed against the concrete like a countdown. Each step peeled back years of rejection, dismissal, and silence. And now, every eye was glued to me, the daughter they once hid, the sister they mocked. When we reached the podium, the commander turned toward the audience. For those unaware, Major Emily Carter led Operation Willow Spear, a mission so sensitive, it remained classified until just last week. Her decision saved not only lives, but an entire diplomatic alliance. I heard a loud thump. It was my father. Dropping his coffee. He always used to say, "Emily's just playing soldier, she'll grow out of it." Now, he was struggling To comprehend the daughter he'd always tried to erase from the family narrative was the same one foreign leaders were thanking in secret letters. I scanned the crowd. Their eyes weren't just watching me, they were searching for who I had become. But they couldn't see it. Because the version of me they remembered was gone. She died in the field. The one who stood here today had survived things they couldn't imagine. Then I saw it.my brother, storming off the stage. No applause. No speech. No honor. He couldn't take it. His entire ceremony had been hijacked by the sister he thought was beneath him, but I didn't follow him. I didn't chase closure. I'd lived without their approval for so long, I had stopped needing it. This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. As I stepped up to the mic, I took a deep breath. I looked straight at the faces that used to roll their eyes at my dreams. I wasn't invited to the ceremony, I said clearly. I wasn't counted, acknowledged, or celebrated by my own family. But I came anyway, not for your approval, but to remind myself. I earned my place in this world without your help. A few guests clapped. Hesitant, unsure. But the commander stepped closer and added, and for the record, she outranks everyone here. The courtyard erupted. My mother covered her face. My father leaned back in his chair like he might faint, but it wasn't over. Not yet, because the real twist, they were about to find out just how far I'd come. Just as the applause faded, a black SUV with government plates pulled up near the edge of the courtyard. Two high-ranking officers stepped out, and when they saw me, they saluted immediately. My father stood halfway from his seat, confusion written all over his face. What's going on? He asked, voice shaky. The commander turned to address the crowd once more. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pentagon has authorized a special announcement. Effective today, Major Emily Carter has been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel for exemplary leadership under extreme conflict zones. My mother gasped audibly. The same woman who once said, "Military isn't for girls," was now watching her daughter become one of the youngest officers to ever earn that rank. But I wasn't finished. The crowd quieted as I stepped back to the microphone. There's one more thing I'd like to share today, I said, holding up the velvet box I'd carried all morning. I opened it slowly, revealing a second medal. One none of them had ever seen, a customized honor awarded for founding a joint humanitarian relief program that now operated in 7 countries, while my family ignored my emails, skipped my calls, and never once visited during deployments. I was building this quietly for people who didn't have families to lean on. I used my savings, my time, my pain, and turned it into something that could actually help. I could see my cousin Brian mouthing something to his mom. Aunt Linda looked ready to see our my brother? Nowhere in sight. He'd disappeared behind the curtains, unable to face the fact that his little sister, the one they never even listed in the program brochure, had outshined him completely. But the final blow hadn't landed yet. I turned to the commander and handed him a sealed folder. This, I said, is the transfer of full operational leadership for the Carter Veteran Relief Foundation, effective immediately. I'm stepping down to focus on my next role. He raised an eyebrow. Which is? I smiled, glancing at my stunned parents. I've accepted a federal advisory role, directly under the Secretary of Defense. The silence turned explosive. My father sat back down, slowly, his mouth hanging open. His words finally came out. Emily, why didn't you tell us? I didn't flinch, because you never listened. But what I was about to say next would silence them forever. I let the silence sit for a moment, heavy, undeniable. The kind of silence that forces people to confront the truth they've spent years ignoring. Then I said it. The Secretary of Defense didn't just offer me a role, I began, locking eyes with my father. He asked me to recommend a short list of military contractors to work on a new veteran housing initiative. My mom's eyes flicked toward my dad, and that's when it hit her, the Carter Construction Company. My father's firm. The one he'd inherited from Grandpa, the one he always bragged about at family gatherings. The one that had been desperately chasing government contracts for the last 5 years. Wait, my dad said, voice barely a whisper. You're the one deciding the short list? I nodded. And Carter Construction? I paused. Didn't even make it past the pre-screen. The color drained from his face. You kicked us out, he said, his voice rising. No, I replied calmly. You were never in. You just assumed you would be, like you assumed I'd always be beneath you. Gasps spread through the crowd. And I saw it, the shift. The rewiring of how they saw me. I wasn't the invisible sibling anymore. I wasn't the joke, the outcast, the reckless girl who left home with a duffel bag and no goodbye. I was the power in the room now, and then, to twist the final knife, I turned to the commander and said, "One last request, sir. I'd like to present an honorary award to the man who taught me exactly what not to become." I walked toward my father, handed him a small framed mirror, and said, "Congratulations. You finally get to look at the real legacy you left behind." He didn't say a word. He couldn't. The crowd burst into awkward laughter, unsure whether to clap or cry. But it didn't matter. I wasn't doing this for them. I turned, walked back up to the stage, and gave my final words. "I built everything they said I couldn't. I earned everything they said I didn't deserve. And I did it all without needing to be seen by the people who refused to look." And as I exited the stage, head high, uniform crisp, metal glinting in the sun, the applause followed me like a wave. But it wasn't just applause. It was acknowledgement. It was vindication. It was justice, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the underdog. I felt unstoppable.